Hey YouTube, Aiden slash Burger Bob, whatever you want to call me, here today to talk to you about the NAMM show. That's right, NAMM show. I want to apologize about these videos, quote unquote. They're not going to be very video-y because you can't really take video inside, especially with my phone, and I only have pictures for you guys. And I'm just going to talk about my experiences. I wrote down notes after I played each brand, and so my thoughts should be pretty fresh on each instrument, and I should have a lot of things written down. I would like to say disclaimer that I work for two drum corps, one that's sponsored by Jupiter, one is sponsored by Yamaha. My thoughts do not reflect either of those drum corps, Pacific Crest or the Cadets, and I play Conn-Selmer instruments, quote unquote, but they are all pretty old, so not really made under the Conn-Selmer umbrella. So I'm coming at this from a pretty not entirely unbiased opinion, but I would like to think that I'm not just making stuff up or shilling for a certain company. So our first brand today, I'm going to make these videos by brand, is a Chinese importer called Hebei, Hebei. They were just the first people that I ran into on my way in to the show. And they had a few trombones and a euphonium. I'm just going to go through the order that I played everything in. So they had a bass trombone there that I couldn't really get any design cues from it. It was just bass trombone-y. I'm not really taking like super specific looks at any of these instruments. As I look at them, I just kind of pick them up and I play them. So some of these impressions might be a little different than other ones. Anyway, they had a bass trombone and several tenor trombones and some euphoniums. I first picked up the bass trombone, and guess what? It was actually pretty good. It really played pretty well. The valves felt good. The slotting was pretty good. It was mostly well built, as far as I can tell. You can usually kind of tell when you pick it up if it feels like really light or kind of loose. It's probably not a good instrument. The bass felt pretty good when I picked it up. The only problem was that there was a big dent in the outer slide. I talked to the lady there about it, and she said it was probably from shipping. And I would be inclined to believe them because like they're not just going to send out a horn with a giant dent that was really obvious. And it's almost better to have like a dent like that than just to have like a badly built slow slide, I guess. Anyway, I thought this was a pretty good instrument. It actually felt really good. It felt like it had a nice big sound, good articulations. Definitely not like on the level of my instrument or anything like that, but for how much this costs, probably under $1,000. Pretty good instrument. On to the tenor trombones. I played at least a couple. I only have tenors in my notes, so I think there are only one or two. And in my pictures here, I see at least three, but I'm pretty sure I only played a couple of them. The valves were okay. On the different instruments, they're all just a little slow. Nothing like super fast. They're probably just not oiled. All the slides were in good shape. They felt really good. For a Chinese instrument, I wouldn't say overall, but for an instrument on a show floor brought by a Chinese importer, I think these are pretty good slides. They played okay. I wasn't like super impressed with these instruments. That was kind of a theme at the show, I feel like. Lots of really pretty good bass trombones and lots of tenor trombones that didn't wow me. And maybe that's because I'm bad at tenor trombone. I seriously don't know. I'm not sure what the difference is there. And the one thing that was on all of these trombones is they all had nickel slides. And nickel slides are pretty common on Chinese instruments because nickel is much easier to make into a tube, and especially a tube with fine tolerances. As far as I know, that's what I've heard from my repair friends, and it's kind of it's the results you see in the instruments. They all have nickel slides almost, and that was almost on all of these instruments at the show that were from Chinese importers, and it was on all these instruments from Hebei. And I don't really like nickel slides. They're not heavy enough for me. They don't really have like the feel. Not that I like a heavy slide to move, but they don't have like the weight I like. and I just don't really like the response of nickel outers. I don't mind a nickel crook, but nickel outers. So that always that changes how I look at an instrument. If it just has a nickel slide, I kind of go, I wouldn't want this in the first place. Moving on to the euphoniums, these were really interesting. I played a ton of euphoniums here, almost as many euphoniums as I did trombones. And these euphoniums were so out there. I actually talked to the lady running the booth about, like, hey, who designed these? And apparently they have a guy there that designs all the low brass, and he's worked on these euphoniums. I mean, the biggest thing was just picking it up. The lead pipe was at a really, really weird angle to the rest of the instrument. So instead of holding the horn more parallel to your body like you do with a normal euphonium, it was more at an angle. So your right hand was almost out at an angle like you'd be playing like a marching baritone, more in front of you. And you could actually see like the front of the euphonium across the valves as you played because it was so far out in front. So that's a really weird thing. That means the lead pipe is shorter as well as at a weird angle, which I think might impact the next point, which is that they were all really, really out of tune. Crazy intonation quirks. One of them, all the B flats lined up. They played pretty well too. The B flats lined up all the way up to high B flat, and then the A's, low A was fine, middle A was okay, and then the high A, right under high B flat, was like 40 cents flat. I just don't even understand how that's possible. I guess it absolutely is, but just crazy intonation things. I should have written some of them down. I think I was playing another one, and the B natural right above B flat was also incredibly flat, even though the D above that was almost in tune. So just things that you wouldn't really expect. Like on euphonium, you expect the high, the sixth partial, F, E, E flat, all to be pretty high, and then everything else is kind of whatever. But these were just almost random in the intonation quirks. I think they both had tuning slide triggers, which is a thing you hit with your left thumb to move the tuning slide out to and in, so you can tune any note. But the setups on those were pretty bad, and you can only kick it out, and you couldn't adjust it to first put the horn in tune and then adjust with the tuning slide trigger. So that was kind of just a bad design choice. The valves all felt okay. I wasn't like super impressed, but I didn't really notice them, which means they weren't too bad. But just super wonky instruments. Usually these horns are just copies of something else, and it's kind of obvious because they look exactly like a Getzen or whatever. The euphoniums were definitely designed, but they have not done a good job on that. Interestingly, one of the euphoniums had the compensating setup differently. So on most euphoniums, you'll see the compensating tubing is above the normal valve tubing. Like you can see the little extra tube going from first to second valve on the front of the instrument. One of them, it was below, so everything was just a little bit different. And that horn was also super out of tune. I mean, I thought they played pretty well. The blow was pretty good, but they were just so out of tune, so weird. And that was all I played at the Hebei booth. They had some tubas and stuff. I tried to stay away from tubas at NAMM because I'm just not very good at tuba, and I don't want to give anyone a bad impression of instruments I played. But that is Hebei. They had some interesting euphoniums, a pretty okay bass trombone, and some tenors that were absolutely serviceable. On to the next brand in the next video.